On a loaded Tuesday slate where momentum swings, early season inconsistency, and huge line gaps make handicapping a challenge, today's matchups offer some of the most intriguing angles we've seen so far. Welcome back to Beyond the Box Score, where we cut through the chaos and find edges inside the numbers, not the noise. And today's breakdown brings a full lineup of games where both the stats and the eye test have been sending mixed messages, making these spots especially interesting for bettors who want to go deeper than surface-level scores. Let's dive right in. Now, as always, before we dive deep, it's worth reminding everyone that supporting the channel keeps these daily breakdowns coming. Less than 25% of you watching are actually subscribed. If you find value in the analysis, if you enjoy the picks, and if you want to help the channel grow toward that 2,000 goal, right now sitting at 1182, hit that subscribe button. It takes 1 second and helps in a huge way. We start with Texas A&M heading into Pittsburgh, a matchup that perfectly represents the early season volatility we've seen across college basketball. Texas A&M comes in at 6-2 straight up, while Pitt enters at 5-3. And honestly, both teams have been tough to evaluate because each has shown versions of themselves that look completely different from game to game. Texas A&M opened the season looking flat, losing as 2.5-point favorites to Oklahoma State in a game that ended 87-63. They followed that with another surprising result, losing outright by 12 at home to UCF despite being 10-point favorites. Those back-to-back performances had people questioning whether A&M was trending toward the lower tier of the SEC. But then, almost instantly, they flipped the switch, rattling off 4 straight wins, including a dominant 95-59 victory over Florida State, a game that made them look like one of the most dangerous teams in the conference. That's the kind of inconsistency that makes figuring them out incredibly difficult. Pitt has been just as unpredictable. They suffered a bad loss to Quinnipiac as 12.5-point favorites, falling by 8. They also lost to UCF by 10 and were handled by West Virginia 71-49. But then, in their most recent game, they stepped up as 5.5-point underdogs against Ohio State and won outright. So both teams come in with resumes that show low floors and surprisingly high ceilings. When you strip away the momentum swings and look only at the raw numbers, Texas A&M has the more efficient offensive profile. They shoot the 3 better, shoot the 2 better, knock down free throws at a higher rate, turn the ball over less, and bring a little more size. Pitt's main statistical edge is offensive rebounding, and of course, home court, but that alone isn't enough to tip the matchup. A&M's losses came against Big 12 competition, while Pitt dropped a game to Quinnipiac and took a rivalry loss by 22 to West Virginia. So while neither team inspires total confidence, the edge goes to the Aggies. The read isn't crystal clear, but leaning toward Texas A&M makes the most sense, with the caveat that this is not the game to go overboard on. It's a lean, not a hammer. Next up, we head to New Jersey for Purdue versus Rutgers, a matchup featuring one of the hottest teams in the country. Purdue is 7-0 straight up but just 3-4 ATS, because while they are winning games comfortably, they have struggled to cover massive numbers. They laid 14.5 against Memphis and won by 9. They laid 19 against Akron and won by 18, just short. They laid 31 against Oakland and won by only 10. The talent is obvious, and they've shown their ceiling with wins like the 30-point destruction of Texas Tech, but when the spreads climb, they sometimes play just below expectations. Rutgers started the season shaky, losing to Central Connecticut State and falling to Boston by 13. They lost to Tennessee, no shame there, and dropped another to Notre Dame. But they looked significantly better in their last outing, entering as 4-point dogs to UNLV and winning by 15, giving them some confidence moving into this one. On paper, Purdue is overwhelming. They hold the #1 offense in the country according to KenPom, and they're shooting 42.3% from 3, an elite number, even if some regression is expected. They take care of the ball, hit their free throws, and have a core of Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, and company playing excellent basketball. But the spread is significant, and Rutgers brings more size than people often give them credit for. That size could play a role, especially at home. The biggest question is whether Rutgers can slow down Purdue's three-point shooting. Rutgers has had trouble defending the arc this season, but home energy in a game like this can help disrupt rhythm. Purdue is the clearly better team, but laying 16.5 on the road is a tall task. With Rutgers coming in hot off that UNLV win, the smarter side appears to be Rutgers plus the points. It's never comfortable fading Purdue, and this isn't a top-tier play, but situationally, the home dog has value. Shifting over to South Carolina versus Virginia Tech, this matchup sets up as a competitive, high-effort game with both teams trying to rebound from recent setbacks. VT started the season strong but enters this one off a rough three-game stretch. They beat Colorado State on a neutral site, but then fell to St. Mary's 77-66 and were beaten handily by VCU. They've also failed to cover in their last 5 outings, signaling a team struggling to maintain form. South Carolina is 5-2 straight up, but their resume reveals that whenever the competition level rises even slightly, they have stumbled. They lost by 7 at Butler, lost outright to Northwestern, and in their last game beat Charleston Southern but failed to cover as 16-point favorites, winning by only 12, a result that feels underwhelming given the matchup. Comparing schedules, Virginia Tech has faced clearly tougher opponents, which matters in early season evaluation. VT shoots the three better, handles the ball more securely. In fact, they have the second fewest turnovers in all of college basketball, and they have a size edge. South Carolina has shown they can beat teams they're supposed to beat, but in step-up situations, they've fallen short repeatedly. With VT coming off back-to-back losses, one of which was a 20-point defeat, they enter this game with urgency and motivation to respond. This feels like a spot where getting the points matters. Virginia Tech has the tools to compete from start to finish, and even if the game comes down to the final possession, the value lies with VT plus the points rather than the moneyline in what should be a closely contested fight. Now we move to Oregon hosting USC, a matchup defined by size and efficiency differences. USC enters Eugene with a roster that's been built impressively, featuring the 6th biggest team in the country, a contrast to Oregon, whose main strength historically has been length and physicality. That used to be their calling card, but this year's roster has struggled against competent competition. Oregon lost by 11 to Auburn, by 17 to San Diego State, and by 10 to Creighton, a team that isn't even expected to be elite this season. Even against weaker opponents, Oregon hasn't been convincing, beating Rice by only 4 and scraping past Hawaii by just 1. In 7 games this season, Oregon hasn't covered a single spread. Not one. That alone paints a clear picture of where this team stands. USC, despite sometimes being overvalued, because of name recognition, looks solid. They shoot the 3 better, shoot the 2 better, hit free throws at a higher rate, take care of the ball, and are even bigger than Oregon, which eliminates Oregon's one major advantage. When a team's strongest attribute gets neutralized, the path to success narrows quickly. USC's matchup advantages are consistent across the board, and given Oregon's track record this season, it's difficult to make a case for the Ducks. USC has the tools to win this game by double digits, and that's the direction the pick leans. Ride the Trojans until Oregon proves they can compete against quality teams. Next, we head to Oxford for Miami versus Ole Miss, or Miss, in the transcript, a a matchup of two teams that project to land in the middle tier of their respective conferences by season's end. Miami has handled lesser opponents, beating teams like Bethune-Cookman, Stetson, Elon, and Delaware State, but whenever competition has risen, they've taken clear losses. They dropped a game to BYU by 10, fell to Florida by 14, and while they did beat Georgetown recently, that's a Georgetown team that projects to be average at best. Ole Miss follows a similar pattern. They handled weaker teams like Ulm, Southeast Louisiana, Cal State Bakersfield, and Austin Peay, and they hold a win over Memphis that mirrors Miami's win over Georgetown, a solid win but not season-defining. Their losses have been close. A 5-point defeat to a strong Iowa team and a 1-point loss to Utah despite entering that game as 10-point favorites. With back-to-back losses, momentum hasn't been ideal, but returning home gives them a much-needed boost. Miami has more size, but they also have a major concern: free throw shooting. At just 65.8%, they struggle in late-game situations, and in a matchup projected to be tight, that's a real vulnerability. This is also Miami's first true road game. Every other game has been at home or on neutral floors, and going into Oxford can be a difficult environment to handle. Ole Miss needs a bounce-back performance, and with home court advantage and Miami's free throw issues looming, the slight edge goes to Ole Miss. Laying the short number feels reasonable given the conditions. Finally, we wrap with Iowa versus Michigan State in East Lansing, one of the premier games on the slate. Both teams enter undefeated at 7-0, but their paths to that record differ dramatically. Iowa has been profitable, going 6-1 ATS, and their offense remains their strength. But when you examine their schedule, the resume lacks top-end wins. Their best win is over Ole Miss at home, a solid but not elite SEC squad. They beat Xavier, a team that appears to be trending toward the bottom of the Big East, and their win over Grand Canyon doesn't elevate the profile much either. Michigan State, on the other hand, has stacked up real quality wins. They just beat UNCC 74-58 as a small favorite, went into Kentucky and won 83-66, and opened the season with a strong win over Arkansas. Their resume shows performance against legitimate competition. Michigan State also brings elite defensive metrics. KenPom ranks their defense 5th nationally in adjusted efficiency, and in a home environment as intense as East Lansing, that defense can set the tone early. Iowa's offense will test them, but Iowa hasn't faced a defense anywhere near this level yet. This feels like the game where the gap in strength of schedule becomes obvious. Michigan State looks like the more complete team, and laying the points at home makes sense. Iowa is good, but they haven't faced a team of this caliber on the road yet. Michigan State's 7-0 feels more genuine, and this is where they separate themselves. And that wraps up today's slate. If you're new here, make sure to tap into Beyond the Box Score every day, where we look deeper, analyze smarter, and break down every matchup with precision so you can bet with confidence, not guesswork. If you got value from today's analysis, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown. This is Beyond the Box Score, where the numbers tell the real story.